So let's be honest right from the start. If you've ever looked at Ursula von der Leyen and thought, she seems polished, competent, reassuring, then you probably haven't looked very closely. Because behind the carefully styled hair and the crisp speeches, there's a long trail of controversies, failures, and a style of leadership that leaves many Europeans asking, is this really the best the EU has to offer? And that's what we're breaking down today. Not the public image, but the actual personality profile of Ursula von der Leyen, the woman running the European Commission like her own private fiefdom. Before we start this unauthorized psychological evaluation, subscribe if you want more deep dives into leaders whose reputations don't exactly match the reality. Alright, let's get into it. Born in 1958 in Brussels, von der Leyen grew up inside the Brussels bubble before it even existed. Her father was Ernst Albrecht, a top European official and later Prime Minister of Lower Saxony, which means Ursula wasn't exactly raised in the messy reality of ordinary life. She grew up where deals were made in closed rooms, where power was inherited like family furniture, and where appearances were always more important than honesty. That upbringing matters, because it shaped her into the type of leader who sees politics not as service, but as management of image, of process, of narrative. Fast forward to 2019, and she's suddenly the first woman to lead the European Commission. Except she didn't get there through the democratic Spitzenkandidat system. She was parachuted into the job after backroom deals by EU leaders. No campaign, no mandate, no direct legitimacy. That tells you everything about both her and the EU. She didn't win, she was chosen, and she accepted it gladly. Now, ambition is not a crime, but von der Leyen's brand of ambition is a specific one. It's survivalist. Look at her record as Germany's defense minister from 2013 to 2019. That ministry is now remembered as a disaster. Under her watch, the Bundeswehr was plagued by shortages so severe that reports came out of soldiers training with broomsticks instead of rifles. Billions were spent, equipment was missing, morale was collapsing. And yet, rather than accountability, she delivered denial. Problems were minimised, critics dismissed, and failures spun as challenges on the path to reform. Most politicians would have been finished. Instead, she got promoted to Brussels. That's not competence. That's political survival, or more accurately, failing upward with the skill of a professional. Her perfectionist streak only makes things worse. Von der Leyen micromanages. She obsesses over control. During her time in Berlin, small matters landed on her desk while the larger picture was neglected. The same habits followed her to Brussels. Instead of empowering commissioners, she centralizes power. Instead of transparency, she prefers tightly managed communication. The most infamous case was during the pandemic. She personally took charge of vaccine procurement, sidelining her health commissioner. Negotiations with Pfizer's CEO were handled directly by her, by text message. And when journalists asked to see those texts, they had conveniently vanished. Deleted, wiped clean. The EU Ombudsman called it maladministration. Members of the European Parliament accused her of secrecy and arrogance. But von der Leyen brushed it off, as if the rules didn't really apply to her. Think about the psychology of that. This is not just about vaccines. It's about a leader who believes that protecting her own image is more important than democratic transparency. A leader who deletes evidence rather than face criticism. That is not accountability. That is ego defense on a political scale. And it fits a wider pattern. Von der Leyen runs the Commission like a presidential court. She has sidelined commissioners, centralized communication, and made herself the face of EU policy. Foreign policy, she takes the stage. Ukraine, she announces sanctions before member states even agree. The Green Deal, she frames it as her personal flagship, regardless of whether farmers or national governments are on board. It's a style that may look strong from the outside, but inside Europe it breeds resentment. National leaders complain she overreaches. Citizens see her as unelected and unaccountable. And yet she presses on because for von der Leyen control matters more than consensus. The psychology here is textbook high conscientiousness, with low tolerance for disorder. She wants order, image, discipline. But politics is chaos, which means she's constantly trying to impose control where compromise is required, and that in turn deepens the divide between Brussels and its citizens. Let's not forget the Green Deal backlash. Von der Leyen loves presenting the EU as a global leader on climate. but the way she pushed policies top-down, without listening to farmers or truckers, sparked protests across Europe. She spoke of vision while people on the ground spoke of survival. It's another example of her distance from ordinary Europeans. She thrives in elite summits, in G7 photo ops, in carefully staged speeches. But when it comes to connecting with citizens, her style feels cold, technocratic, and out of touch. That's why she has become such a convenient target for Eurosceptics. She embodies exactly what they criticise, a distant, unelected elite running Europe by decree. And then there's the hypocrisy. She calls for transparency but deletes her texts. She speaks of accountability but refuses to answer questions in Parliament. She demands solidarity but concentrates power in her own hands. It's the contradiction of Ursula von der Leyen, preaching European values while practicing the oldest habit of political aristocracy, protecting herself first. So what's the personality profile here? Highly ambitious, strategically resilient, and obsessed with control. Skilled at projecting unity but unwilling to share responsibility. Defensive when criticised, evasive when questioned. In psychological terms, high conscientiousness, perfectionist, strong ego protection mechanisms, and moderate narcissistic traits, especially in the image above substance category. But in political terms, she is the archetype of the Brussels technocrat, elite background, no electoral legitimacy, a talent for survival, and an instinct to centralise power while shielding herself from scrutiny. The irony is that she presents herself as the person defending democracy and European unity, but her style of leadership does the opposite. By concentrating power, avoiding transparency, and silencing dissent, she fuels the very Eurosceptic backlash that threatens the EU. She is not the cure, she is the symptom. So what do we learn from Ursula von der Leyen? That failure in one place can become promotion in another, if you know how to survive. That a polished image can hide a record full of scandals and controversies, and that the European Union, under her leadership, looks less democratic, not more. If you dislike her, it's not without reason, because her personality and her leadership style are exactly what critics of the EU have warned about for years: concentration of power, lack of accountability, and leaders chosen not by citizens but by insiders. And if you admire her, well, perhaps you admire the image, because the record tells a different story. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more, because as long as the EU keeps elevating leaders like Ursula von der Leyen, there will be no shortage of psychological profiles worth examining. Until next time, stay skeptical and remember, in Brussels, power is rarely about competence, it's about survival.